And while we're changing, those of you standing in the back, grab a seat. Up front, we got some extras. All right, how you going? Right there. All right. So Jesse, welcome. Glad to have you here. I'm excited about this conversation. So tell me a little bit more. Just give me a little bit more of your background, because you shared it with me, but they need to learn a little more of who you are.
Yeah, it's a bit of a different one. So I played professional football in the CFL for 6 seasons. Had a couple cups of coffee with 2 NFL teams. And then going into 2009, I got a phone call from the high performance director, Matt Hindle, and he gave me a call, and I was at my parents' house actually, and I was going into free agency. And the 2010 Olympics was just around the corner, and he said, "You're a big guy who can run pretty fast. Have you ever tried pushing a bobsled?" I said, "No, I haven't." He goes, "Well, we're going to bring you out and see how it goes." And then from that point, in a very short window, 9-month window, I went from recovering from a shoulder surgery that I occurred in June to marching in the opening ceremonies in February 2010, representing Canada. So it was pretty cool. So it was a great experience. I went back to football for 1 more season, and then stayed with Bobsleigh for another 9 seasons. During that period of time, it was really important that I needed to figure out what I wanted to do when I grow up, because I can't play professional football and be a professional tobogganer my entire life. Although I do like wearing spandex, it is one of those things no, it's the closest thing I got to being Spider-Man.
There you go.
I started to explore where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do next. So I spent about 4 years with a small private equity company in Calgary focused on energy services, and went back, competed in 2018, my last Olympic Games, and then was pulled in by the founder to join the founding team of Neo Financial. And that was a really great opportunity. I was in a good spot, but this was a really unique opportunity to come in and work with established founders who had exited Skip the Dishes, and were taking on a massive challenge in Canada in the banking system. So, I climbed back down the ladder and started fresh again. Spent 5 years there, and then I got another knock on the door, and it was Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton. They had just removed their entire administration, and they asked me to come back and be the high performance director. So the last 2 seasons I spent as the performance director, kind of like a general manager of a professional sports team. You're in charge of pathways, you're in charge of recruitment, you're in charge of understanding like your policies and your procedures, your governance. So we make it through to 2026. It was not a great performance. There's a massive overhaul happening in our organization right now, and my role has recently changed as of 2 weeks ago. So,
okay.
Yeah, so it's, again, very similar to a startup. You're always doing more with less. You have to. You're bootstrapping a lot of things. Our funding was cut in 2023. We are down 4 staff from what we were going into the 2022 Olympics. So it's instilling the mentality of, okay, we're all going to have to take on a little bit more. And our CEO, who came in 2 months before I did a really good job of looking at the big picture of what we need to accomplish here. So moving into a role that is more focused on growing the sliding sports in Canada. Our alumni engagement, we have 400 alumni that are bobsledders and skeleton athletes that have never had any established connection with our organization once they've left. Recruitment, and then on the technical side, I'm the lead of start performances, so really in charge of what does it look like, feel like in our push environment, and that's really what we can train when we're in the summer. Nobody can slide in the summer, but there's facilities where we can practice our push, and that's a big part of winning races.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, ton of experience in high performance, organizations in different ways from that perspective. So, you used the term meritocracy with me when we were kind of prepping for this. Talk a little more about that, and how does that translate to businesses today? How should that translate?
Sport is in some aspects of business, meritocracy it's what you put out there is what you're being judged on, and sport is the purest form of that. Especially in time sports, track and field. Standards are generally, you have to meet this to go and do this. If you do not meet this, you do not go forward. It's just how it works. Winning matters at the highest level of a sport. Now, I'm also coaching my daughter's U9 soccer team. It's different.
Yeah.
Winning doesn't matter for me, but you'd be shocked how all of them are keeping score all the time. But at the same point in time, at the highest levels, winning matters. We want to win. We're wearing the maple leaf for a reason, and it's to represent Canada and to bring home medals for our country. It's the highest honor that we can have as an athlete. So, when you look at it in business, one of the things I find very, very interesting is winning matters a lot. And this is true in sport as well, but not at all costs. I mean, we have rules in place in sport that are put in place to keep things fair. We have standards that are very, very important that go beyond the meritocracy. Who you are as a person, as a teammate, are you coachable? I wouldn't say it's often, but I've seen a lot of cases where your top performer is also slowing down the entire machine because they're a shitty person and they drag people down. These are hard decisions that teams and organizations need to look at when they're trying to create a high-performance environment. Now, I've read about case studies and listened to case studies where the highest performer, who also is causing the most trouble from a cultural standpoint, is removed, the entire team elevates around them. That's a tough decision. How do you take away a winner based off of the data and the performance that potentially ties in revenue or potentially ties in funding in sport? That's a brave move. But if you want your whole organization to rally around that, it takes hard decisions. But you'd be surprised at who's able to lift up when they're put into a better situation and a better environment that allows them to be more free and to perform at their highest levels.
Yeah. So when you think about the difference between elite, right, versus good, right? So talk a little bit. You kind of alluded to it a little bit. Go a little deeper though. And when you see the elite at an individual level, how do you make sure, from a performance standpoint, you're pushing that elite player even further to be further elite, right? It's a constant growth.
The great thing about elite people is they rarely need too much pushing. Now, good people is, you're able to do your job well. Elite is being able to do your job above the standard continually over time, and when those elite people face, and that is not all the time, so when you come into impediments or face moments of adversity, resiliency kicks in. Mm-hmm. And they're able to work within that to continue to strive to go beyond even what you had expected of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So you used a phrase, it's a series of phrases, that I'm still thinking about it, but culture drives expectations, expectation drives behaviors. Finish that and walk us through that 4-part connection there.
Culture drives expectations, expectations drive your behaviors, behaviors reveal your habits, habits will tell you your future. So when...
Say that one more time. That is really good.
Okay. Culture drives expectations. Expectations drives behaviors. Behaviors reveal your habits. Your habits will tell you your future. So you're going from an open aperture and then closing it all the way in on the individual. And when we look at culture, and this is what I geek out about, organizational culture, organizational effectiveness within teams, whether it's corporate or sports environments, this is where I start, because this is the greatest opportunity to look at it from a macro and a micro. If you see a bunch of people running around with terrible habits, then that is a reflection of your culture and how it trickles down into those habits. You set the right standards, you set the right expectations, you set the norms, those will build the habits then produce the future behaviors, if you're setting it the right way, of those that it's going to elevate everything else along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're looking through this, you went, one of the hardest transitions you described was going from daily rep-by-rep feedback in a sport to quarterly feedback in corporate. Talk a little bit about that and kind of, how that feedback loop maybe needs to change on the corporate side to mirror more what you see elsewhere.
Yeah, when I left sports, I had been at a high level when you look at football and bobsleigh for over 20 years. So for over 20 years, whether I'm working with a strength and conditioning coach, speed coach, technical coaches, offensive coordinators, whatever it might be, I was receiving feedback daily, continually. And then I go from that environment for over 2 decades to having a performance review after 3 months. That was a big shock for me personally, and I understood very, very quickly that it wasn't going to, nobody's going to measure my keystrokes and tell me that I'm not working fast enough. That is not an effective way to have coaching in a corporate environment. But it did challenge me to start thinking about building my own feedback systems so that I could get what I wanted, what I needed it. And that included asking better questions when I had the right people in the room and making sure that I took the time to ask those questions. It included understanding, how I am able to build a system for myself that's going to provide me feedback. So and then again, making sure that, when I have the time of the people that are going to provide me the greatest opportunity to grow in what I'm doing, making sure that I'm letting them know that it's important to me.
Yeah.
So when I think about it now, and now that I'm back in a sports system where feedback is, we're talking about, as an athlete, sorry, I'm digressing here for a second, you pick things up, you put them down. You run from here to there, you go pick some more things up, you put them down. It's the monotonous work that you're putting in every single day to try to get a little bit better every single day. And the feedback is important. The weight provides feedback to me when I'm lifting. The time provides feedback when I'm doing sprints and when I'm pushing. My body gives me feedback when I'm pushing it too hard, or potentially when I'm leaving a little extra in the tank. And my coaches give me feedback. And it is so important that in this environment, in teams environment, that at every single level, people should be getting feedback. And just show of hands, who's managing teams? Okay, so we have a significant amount of people. So what is the systems that are in place so that you or your team leaders below you are being able to provide feedback to your front line? And then more importantly, who's coaching you? Because just because you're running a team, it doesn't mean that you're running it well, or that you can't improve, or that you can't improve yourself. Coaching is just not for the front line. It's just not for your CX agents. It's just not for sales. It's for all levels. And the greatest leaders have somebody who's working with them. Because again, it comes back to that elite behavior. I want to be able to perform at a high level continuously. I want to have strong standards. I want to have great behaviors. I want to build trust, because that's really what builds high-performance environments.
Yeah, and I think some of us might say quarterly feedback. We'd love to get at least that, because I've been in organizations where it's maybe every 6 months, but usually it's once a year.
And if that's the expectation, just make sure it's crystal clear.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about alternates.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting one, right? And going back to youth sports, I was a baseball coach with my kids, for a while, and then he moved to another team, and then I lost control, and then he, of course, I didn't think he played enough, but it's how it goes, right? Every dad, right? But when you think about that, the alternates, the bench, et cetera, talk a little bit about that. Share kind of your thoughts on that with the audience.
This is something really interesting about the sport of bobsleigh. And this really comes from the International Federation's decision on how alternates and what they are. Okay, so you travel, in the men's world, you travel with 5 people. You have 1 pilot, you have 4 crew, and you have an alternate. On the women's side, you have 1 racing crew, you have a pilot, and you have an alternate. When you go to an Olympic Games, which is our biggest sporting event, the alternates are play a critically important role for the team and the environment at the major game events, World Championships, Olympic Games. You hope everybody wants to be racing. So first off, you're having a conversation where you're telling an athlete, you're not selected to be racing at the Olympic Games, we want to bring you as an alternate. There's disappointment. There should be disappointment if you have the right people in that environment. But then you have to explain to them what the importance of this role is and what their job is. So as an athlete, I've been a part of it when I'm racing. I've seen where the team has selected the next fastest person individually, so that if something were to happen, that person can slide in and you don't skip a beat. What I've seen happen multiple times is that person brings the entire environment down because they're disappointed the entire time. They're frustrated. They feel like they deserve to be there, and it's reflected in their attitude and how they show up. So we took a bit of a different approach this past games. We didn't select the next fastest person. They needed to be high performing, but we selected the people with the greatest character and the team mentality. And the answers that they provided us after telling them that were, one, I'm a bit frustrated, but I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. Within 24 hours of the alternates showing up, because they show up a little bit later during the game's environment. And again, you are lugging sleds, polishing runners, working on sleds, sliding, but not racing. On the men's side, especially, and I'm going to say his name because he's a great example of a great teammate, Chris Homestead. The whole entire men's team came up to me and said, Chris has been nothing but amazing since he's been here, and he's helped us so much already within 24 hours. So how many people, show of hands again, how many people are managing somebody who was passed over on a promotion? Okay, that's quite a few people. Disappointment is okay. Disappointment is actually a good sign. What they do next is their choice. They can either pout, be a pain in the ass, complain, performance could potentially drop because they felt they really, really deserved it. Now this is where, again, coaching can really come in and help out. If you're giving them the feedback on what they actually need to do to get that promotion, you've now set a new target for that person. You've now pulled them off of the path that's going to cause disruption within your team and put them back on the trajectory to go out and accomplish what they need to accomplish so that they can fulfill their intrinsic goals while supporting the team as well. Because even in a team, there's still an I. The I is important in a team, but if it overcomes the we, that's when you have problems. That's where standards then lower.
So you've been running 90 miles an hour down, in a sled.
Yeah.
With just a little
100.
bit. 100 miles an hour. Okay.
Yeah, I broke 100 miles an hour. 162 kilometers an hour.
And it's only a little bit of fiberglass between you and a hard wall.
And a lot of ice. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about that, you use the phrase kind of that the Navy SEALs use, right? You fall to the level of your training. You don't rise to the occasion, but you fall to the level of your training. Talk a little bit more about that then. So you're talking about investing in that group, potentially alternates as well, on training them on that expectation.
Well, it's, again, I trained for, I used to give a keynote on preparation going into an Olympic Games and stuff like that. I actually had broken down the amount of hours that I had trained for an outcome that I was looking for that was just like a tenth of a second. But it was thousands and thousands of hours to improve by a tenth of a second. But that's where medals are won and lost. So if you have a relentless pursuit of getting better, that is where you're going to find your hundreds. It takes a team. You can't just do it on your own. It requires feedback from the people around you. It requires the trust of your teammates. But if you let's change relentless pursuit. Let's go a purposeful pursuit of excellence. If you have purpose in what you're doing every single day, you are going to get better. And as you continue to get better, when the pressure rises, you don't need to go find anything else. You don't need to go above and beyond because you've put yourself into this environment so many times already. You can fall to the level of your training. Because your training is so high level and it's so comfortable now that you're going to perform. You're going to be able to go and do your job to the level that you've trained yourself to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to definitely have some time for some questions, so get ready. I know you probably have a lot to ask here. Customer experience, the what I described earlier as the verb form, the customer's actual experience. You use the term, it's an external expression of the internal alignment of the company, right? My last book was Alignment on the Rocks, and it just talked about the challenge of aligning an organization and also aligning yourself individually. But so for the leaders here, because we had a lot of leaders who ran teams, for those that don't run a CX team specifically, but they touch the customer through their people, through other ways, what does internal alignment really look like, and how do you think about that alignment challenge?
Yeah, it's something that when you had brought that up, I was thinking about it a lot, and obviously I go back to sport and how do I connect the two. A customer doesn't experience a department as an individual entity, experiences the alignment of the whole. And then that reflection of that experience with the department is going to give you your how you feel about that entire organization. So whether it's a sales or CX or an external marketing or an activations, if your touch point with the customer is not aligned with the rest of the organization and what you're trying to accomplish, that's going to be reflected in the customer experience. When you look at it from a sport perspective, when you see athletes competing at the Olympics, that's the external expression of the alignment created over thousands of hours, over 4 to 8 to 12 years of training and work. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So, CX can be the tip of the spear, sales can be the tip of the spear, but if it is not aligned with what you're trying to do through that mission statement or through those internal standards of the company, that's going to be the direct reflection of what that customer thinks about the entire company. And I was on a call with Air Canada, and I'm speaking with the agent, and what he's telling me is not making me happy, but I know this is not him as an individual. And he did well. And he got a little chirpy with me, but I was getting a little pushy back. But it's a reflection, but I also, having worked in Neo Financial, gave me exposure to CX. I actually got to be on the phones in CX. I can share that story in a second if you'd like, but it gave me a different perspective on understanding, okay, this guy's following his policies and procedures. He's not the one that set the change fare rates, which is ridiculous, by the way. But he still was professional all the way through, and that is what I appreciated about that, how they're working there.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's got a question for Jesse? One right over here, and one up front here, and one in the back. We're going with the back first.
Oh, okay. Hey, Jesse. Great stuff. One of the things I love about elite professionals is the discipline. I think that's one word I didn't hear in the entire conversation, but it was very implicit. Could you talk through?
Sorry, can you bring it a little closer?
Could you talk through how individual discipline as well as team discipline plays a big part in the successes that you or the team overall achieves, right?
Individual discipline
as well as team discipline. So how that kind of translates to successes, because it's something. It's a parallel that you can draw between elite sports and how organizations perform as well.
Yeah. Discipline is the superpower, by the way, of all high-level performers. It's not motivation. It's not inspiration. It's discipline. Motivation is like a double shot of espresso. Gets you going, but it's going to wear off. So discipline is a foundational component to high performance. There's going to be hard days. You have to be disciplined. Even the greatest in the world will speak about Muhammad Ali. I hated training, but I hated losing more. The discipline is what drives you to do it day in and day out. And with people with discipline often, can rub off on groups of people around them and get them going in that direction as well.
One right there. Right in front of you. Oh, no, okay.
No?
There was someone in the middle over
you
here,
sure?
right here. Yep, at the table.
So I'm trying to ask you a question first. Do you want a hockey example or a football example?
Yeah, I know both relatively well, so I definitely know football better.
Okay, so football, Seattle Seahawks,
Yeah.
and the Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
Winning was important to the kids. Coming in from education into business consulting, we really worked on bringing community perspectives into the football stadium to win the contest, to ensure that community engagement was there. So giving back to the community through sport,
Yes.
by connecting with individuals. So we built 3 bridges in hockey and football, and I'm not an athlete. I want to ask you the question first, how has Canada done that? Because I've been working with the United States as a Canadian, and the 3 bridges were, 1, connect back to your city or township and connect back to a student to give back who cannot attend the sport maybe. Maybe they don't have affordability, maybe they're not exposed to the sport, giving back. The second bridge was giving back to the country by getting a national dealership, so signing on with a company like Nike and promoting yourself, but giving back to community through that. And the third bridge was international. So for an example, I grew up in a country called Sri Lanka. We do not play football. Football is soccer in South Asia. So connecting back to a country that does not understand the sport and giving back and connecting internationally. So 3 bridges were done with both sports that brought in 2 championships, the Olympic gold medal for the women and the football championship in Seattle, where I spent part of my time in the United States. So 3 things that worked really well was giving back, connecting, and really resonating with the people you serve. How would you take those examples and apply it in Canada is my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll speak about our Bobsleigh Canada skeleton because it's what I'm most familiar with. Community is massive. It is a massive, important part of our identity and shared identity story within our organization. Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton is the most diverse winter sporting organization in Canada. Part of it is because it's a late entry sport. We recruit people out of university, professional levels, and all different types of sports. We had a Jamaican diver on our team last year doing bobsleigh. And you'd be like, well, what? The guy could jump through the roof. He was super powerful. We taught him the skills that he needed to be able to go do that. Now, because of that, we have people that are very passionate about giving back to their communities. So as a not-for-profit organization, we don't put money back into the community. One of the metrics that I'm starting to track now is time back in the community. So last year, it was really, we were at the Children's Hospital. We were supporting a Calgary Urban Project Society. But this is where it becomes very important that I teach and work with our athletes to zoom out a little bit, because when we're at the Children's Hospital, when you're wearing the maple leaf, they're cheering you on. When we go to the retirement community, they're cheering you on. You're not just representing your friends and family, you're representing communities. Potentially the communities of your own heritage of where you've come from. So it is a massive part about growing the sport, but an Olympic athlete's unintentional job is to inspire the next generation. And when you're out on the hockey rink, you see kids wearing Sidney Crosby jerseys. Like, it's a full cycle. That might be the next Sidney Crosby. It might be, but it might not. But it inspires, and the dedication that those people put into their craft are propping up our communities around us.
Awesome. Well, help me thank Jesse. We were out of time, unfortunately, but help me thank Jesse.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
This was fun.